Talk Shoe. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we are wrapping up our look at summertime horror by looking at the 1961 film Night Tide, starring Dennis Hopper. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the steampunk graphic novel Clockworks, co-written with Tony Salvaggio, now in paperback from Humanoids. From Seattle tonight, Adam Foshko, screenwriter for the new Skylanders Superchargers, story consultant for Destiny the Taken King, writer and creative producer of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Exo Zombies, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm probably missing your most recent game. Hello, Adam.
Hi, how are you all tonight? Great to be back.
I'm so glad to have you back. Yes. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Howdy.
Howdy. Okay. According to Wikipedia, Night Tide is a 1961 thriller film. I don't know what that means. Written, directed.
I don't either. Go on.
It's a killer mermaid mystery film starring Dennis Hopper. It was filmed in 1960. It came out in 61, and it didn't get a general release until 1963, but it was recently restored by the Academy Film Archives. This one actually has developed something of a cult following. Nevertheless, it's not the biggest cult in the world. I only discovered it a couple of years ago, and I really am excited. You know, we've been doing these like beach movies and so forth, and so I'm excited to get a chance to share this film with you.
And I can't wait to find out if this is a movie, a film, or a picture.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, let's start.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk about that.
I don't know. Okay, Adam can tell us. Julia, let's start with your opening thoughts for Night Tide. Lay it on us.
I mostly liked it. I like Dennis Hopper a lot in this role. I think it's so interesting to see him as a young, naive Navy guy, like enlisted men or whatever.
He's a sailor, yeah.
Yeah, he's a sailor, seaman.
Yeah. Anyway, and he, he's just so sweet, and given that, when I think of him as this old, creepy, like just very strange person in some of these movies that he's in later in his life. So this was just really interesting. The mermaid storyline is odd. I don't know if this qualifies as horror. It's more of what would you say, suspense, I guess, maybe a little bit, not even. But anyway, but it's kind of neat. The ambiance is neat. There's a few interesting little bits here and there. I'm glad I watched it.
By the way, before Adam gives us, I think there's room to call it. Drew Edwards talks all the time. Our illustrious friend, the editor of HorrorMovies.net. Drew Edwards talks all the time about how he thinks there's no such thing as a thriller that's different from horror. In other words, that these are just different ways of describing different kinds of horror movies. But we'll get into it. Adam, what are your thoughts? Young Dennis Hopper wandering around, some awesome locations. What do you got?
Well, yeah, I liken this, and I'll tell you that this is a picture.
Okay.
This is a picture. You could say it's a film, kind of like almost like it has this weird sort of low budget student film kind of thing going on to it. I kind of wonder if it was shot, if it was shot separately, like the sound wasn't shot at the same time. It was like a dual system. It's almost done like in an inexpensive way, but it was interesting to sort of see that, since as you all know, as you both know, I live in Los Angeles, so knowing these locations is sort of interesting. But this is definitely a picture, but it's very strange. It's very dreamlike. It's almost like having a fever, and the passage of time is not, it's not linear. And moments of it you enjoy it when you see it, but as you think about it, you think where you are in the story, you think back on it, and it's almost like a dream you can't quite remember. It's a very strange sort of feeling. And what's odd is, I'm looking at very, very young Dennis Hopper, which to me, I liken this to another Corman picture, which is Little Shop.
Yeah.
And so you're looking, at a young Nicholson. And it's that same sort of thing where, we knew them certainly when they got older and they made a name for themselves in different pictures. But to see him this young and this I won't say wholesome looking. He's not. He's wearing a sailor's outfit, which gives you a certain image. But he gives you the impression of being sort of young and sort of naive and just off the boat and whatever. And I remember him when I first moved to Los Angeles. Dennis Hopper showed up next to me when he was still alive in Venice, because he lived in Venice, and he was, as we all know him, right? He was next to me at a burger joint. Like, hey man, I wonder if they put these grilled onions on your burger. I mean, he was just talking to me because I was standing there. And I was like, oh, it's Dennis Hopper. So it's odd for me to sort of think of Dennis Hopper then, and then to see this show, and study his face and study his mannerisms, and even though I would do that, and I was trying to follow the storyline, I swear to you, it's hard for me to tell you entirely what this thing is about. It's one of those things where I really am glad I saw it, but I'm trying to remember what it was I saw. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me to explain. I was trying to explain to somebody what it was I was watching, and Jason had brought it up earlier. It's sort of like The Terror. It's like, yeah. You go, you start watching The Terror, and there are just times when things happen and you either turn it off, or if you forget you turned it off, or something like that. You just it goes on. The Terror is something that starts and eventually ends, but you have no idea what happened in the middle. And this is better.
I'll be honest with you, Adam. I feel that way about most of the films we watch for this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, they all have characteristics that make them stand out. This is from the music that they add to it, which is such a strange choice for a lot of the music that's in this picture. To the writing, which I really did pay a lot of attention to, the dialogue, and just the mannerisms, and just it was like being with these people for a week. Yeah. In an hour and 45 minutes or whatever it is of viewing this thing. It's like being with them for a week and showing up for breakfast the next day, and you're having breakfast with them, and you're just listening to their conversation. It just feels like you're there. That much is sort of coming out of you as you're watching this. You're losing that much tread as you're watching this picture. But I can't tell you what it's totally about. But I'm glad I saw it. It's one of those things that I'd always sort of heard about, but I never managed to sit through. But there's a lot of opening ideas here. But it's just very strange to sit there and watch an early Dennis Hopper, and he's playing possibly the most wholesome character that I've ever seen him play, and that worries me too, because he's playing him in a very unwholesome way.
Oh yeah.
Well, and by the way, the word is midshipman. Is the word I was trying to come up with.
All right.
Midshipman. Okay.
Okay. And in fact, one of the first things we'll talk about is the curious character that Dennis Hopper plays. But my opening thought, I really love to look at this movie. I mean, first of all, because a while back, Adam, you used the phrase snow globe, that terrible film. This is way better than Mars Needs Women, but you said Mars Needs Women did serve the purpose, though, if you just wanted to look through a snow globe at late 60s, Tommy Kirk and running around Dallas, then that served that. And this is like that, except for that it is a high contrast, black and white, foggy, dreamy Los Angeles that we're looking at. Well, I mean, specifically dreamy Venice Beach and Santa Monica Pier, and the sort of run-down and seedy Pacific Ocean Park Pier amusement park. All of this, and jazz clubs and all this stuff that and you dream that you could just step through it somehow and wake up in that world that Dennis Hopper has. And because the conceit of the story is that it always takes place during his weekends, which it takes you a while in the movie for them to sort of make that clear to you. But that's what's going on. He spends all week working, and then he comes back, and he just spends the weekends just sort of wandering. The movie has no ticking clock. It has no sense of suspense. There is literally nothing driving it forward. and yet it's wonderful to just sort of just loll around in, kind of the way the characters are sort of just lolling around in this slow-moving mystery that they're living in. You know, and we say all that stuff, and I can imagine hearing me say these things about this film, and you go, well, that's nothing I would want to watch. That sounds terrible. But no, this is actually a
no. It's strangely pleasant. It's
yeah.
You know, it's probably like falling asleep in the snow.
Yeah.
It's probably, you know, it's not good for you, but it's very sort of pleasant and sort of uniquely inviting. And the other thing is that, you know, I grew up in the Los Angeles of that time. I mean, I showed up a little bit later, but a lot of that stuff was sort of there. And quite honestly, if I think back of my own memory of a time like that, you know, I also saw a huge ton of movies that were shot similarly, things like The Unearthly, you know, things like that, where you really have that sense of, you know, of Los Angeles of a particular time, Astro Zombies, any of those sort of movies, and it gives you a snapshot of L.A. and in this case Venice of a particular time, and weirdly enough, you know, it's like a dream or a memory or something like that, where the events don't totally line up, but they kind of do, and there's missing time, and it's kind of okay, and you try to weave together the narrative as best you can, and that's, you know, and it's kind of all right, because you judge it, I think, differently than you would, I don't know, Eurotrash, anything that's vivid, right, or that would adhere to the usual sort of, the usual tropes that we sort of come to know and love.
The only European film I would liken this to would be something like Suspiria, which, unlike most other Italo pictures, has a real sort of dreamy quality like that. And that dreaminess is such a cliche for people to say, but it really only fits a few movies. Suspiria is one. This is one. I think The Terror is one. I think the word that would have been used in literature is the uncanny, that sense of something dissonant about what you're watching, that something in the art that is beyond what you're immediately aware of, and that's definitely captured here. Let's start. So, to cover the beginning of this film, you have this young sailor on leave, basically on his weekends, who just wanders around a very abandoned-looking Santa Monica in late summer, and you know, on his first Saturday night there, he meets a beautiful girl.
Yeah, he wanders into this jazz club that's like playing real authentic jazz.
Yeah.
And he's kind of looking around, and it's all these almost beatniky type. They're not really,
sure.
but they're
totally. And he's very uncomfortable too, which is, I mean, he just is trying to sort of, you know, be in that scene and trying to be cool in his whites.
Yeah, right. He hasn't changed. You know, later when he has kind of a place to hang out, he has extra changes of clothes. But you're right, he's wandering around in his navy whites with which always makes you look younger. You know, so it makes him look even younger than the young that he already is. And he meets this beautiful girl, and very. I love this guy's shtick, because he's like, hey, can I sit with you? I can't really see the band.
I can't see the band, but my back is to them, and then he sits with his back to the band and just stares at her.
Right.
Yes.
And he's like, so, I'm talking to her, and she's like, yeah, can you shut the hell up? I'm trying to listen to this band.
I'm trying to listen to the band.
And then he's like, okay, but I'm going to talk to you some more. She's like, fine, whatever.
Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about, because these few scenes are when he meets her, when he follows her, when they don't spend the night together, but they wind up having breakfast together. Let's talk a little bit about Dennis Hopper's actual role. So he plays Johnny, and Adam, you were saying that you found his performance a little different, a little more than an actor actually might need to bring to the character of Johnny.
Yeah, you know, I began, I mean, possibly because I had all this time in between things that were going on in the picture, that I felt like as I would think back on it, I kept thinking, and we'll talk about the plot as we go, but I began to sort of look at his mannerisms, and it was, you know, I understood, I think, what he was doing, because he kept, you know, he had this obsession with touching his head, and touching his hair, and he would stop at the booth, and that's normal when you take a photo and you take your hat or whatever and you do your hair or whatever. But it seems like every now and then he would just stop and he would touch his hair and he would make sure his hair was in place. And there were these very sort of strange things that he would repeat them, and as he would do that, and just his whole manner made me kind of. It was not necessarily something that was like overtly strange, but it became a little bit unnerving. It became a little, slightly serial killery.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, there's a whole other subplot to this, maybe, where you could just sort of see the dream within the dream really is something along the lines of, he's not just Johnny the sailor boy. He's a guy who's Johnny the sailor boy axe murderer. I mean, he's a guy who...
one straight up lie early in the film, in fact, that leads me to think that your theory might have some credence. And we'll get to it in a second. But I agree with you. Like, just look at him, the way he talks to her when they're like hanging out outside. And I don't mean when he forces a kiss on her, because that seems to work pretty well for her. But
that's all really creepy in the beginning. He's pretty super rapey. He's really really creepy dude, sailor guy at the onset, and then it just takes another turn.
I mean, I think you guys are reading in because he's Dennis Hopper. Because the fact is, he doesn't he walks her to her place and he's like, "Can I come up?" And she says no, and so he goes away. He's not like
that's true,
pushing, forcing himself on her. I think he's just a normal sailor who's just on short leave.
In for the weekend.
Impossible.
Yeah.
No,
but
he's the old spice guy.
Well, one thing that he does that I think is kind of interesting is, there when they're talking and later like at breakfast the next day, Adam, you and I were kind of talking about this beforehand. His character is spacey. He really seems to kind of be looking in the distance or looking around, and then he'll kind of come back and focus on the person he's listening to. And you really get the impression that he's not really completely listening. But then he'll come out and ask this really sort of observant or cutting question that makes you aware, oh my God, he's actually listening. The character, because suddenly she'll say something and he'll go, well, why do you say that exactly? Or that sounds pretty strange. And you go, my God. And to me, that's one of the most unnerving types of persons I've ever encountered, where you really get the impression they're not listening, and then it turns out that they're like picking up all the details, and you're like, I don't know how to read.
Right. And thinking about it and kind of like, oh my God, it's like I'm alone. I'm alone, but I'm not alone. But this guy's actually like listening to me.
Yeah. So there's an oddness to him. Also, his phrasings are all very strange.
I love his phrasing. I think it's really interesting.
He'll if he can say anything in an odd way, he will. So it's, hey Maura, kind of always, or why are you going over there? There's a certain weird,
right, laconic kind of. Is he? I mean,
I don't think it's creepy. I don't think it's creepy. I think
but it is.
Very,
it's so creepy.
I don't know.
It's not just,
I think he's creepy.
Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper.
It's not just Dennis Hopper. I mean, if you're a guy who was kind of like going, "Hey, so why are you going over there?" I mean, he's just he's lingering, and he's just listen. I mean, if a guy showed up and just started doing that, I'd be like, I gotta go. I would not invite him to breakfast. I mean, it's just one of those things that would be, creepy or not, you'd be like, no, come on.
No, but see, okay, I'm sorry, but he is cute and he's a sailor. Right? Like, there's nothing cuter than
cute
a sailor.
And he's
so,
what?
Yeah.
What?
I think I would just be like, yeah, okay.
And that's actually what happens, because he meets this girl and she becomes his girlfriend. They're hanging out on the weekends, He tells a story when they have their first breakfast, and over the course of it, apparently this thing is going on for many months, right? But he goes, well, why am I here? My dad left early. My mom is dead. I've never seen the world.
I was telling Jason, his parents are going, are you still telling the story about how I'm dead and your father left us?
But yeah. So, but this girl, okay. So the girl.
It's not like she's not strange. I mean, that's okay. You go on.
Right.
She's so weird. Holy crap, she's like Bride of Dracula weird.
Yeah, she's a very strange.
Bride of Frankenstein, rather.
The young woman that he meets is Mora. I am called Mora. She says,
so weird.
What's your name?
Maybe that's why I didn't think he was so creepy, is because I'm always comparing him to her.
Well, that is true. I mean, I am called Mora, who, I collect things from the sea, like you, obviously,
yes.
the sailor. And by the way, in my spare time, I also catch seagulls.
Yes. Just like wham! It just lands in her lap. She's got
the poor little seagull had to have its beak wired shut so it wouldn't bite anybody.
Yes, they do have it closed with a wire. I'm sure that they freed the seagull right away. But you've got her. We meet her the first night at the jazz club. This old lady who I took to be just her snippety mom just shows up like at the club and says in a foreign language, you need to get out of here. This isn't the kind of place you're supposed to be, or whatever it is she says. They argue. The snippy mom leaves, and that's the first time we see the mysterious older lady who haunts Mora through the whole film. But Mora lives by herself in this. Well, you know what? Let's save that for just a moment. To continue Mora's personality, she is mysterious. And she says that she works as a seaside attraction. She's a mermaid.
Right.
And she...
Not weird.
She's right. Well, you're going to do... What I find really interesting here is in the course of walking around, he meets a girl who dresses up as a mermaid. He meets the foreigner who runs the big merry-go-round underneath Mora's apartment building. The sort of sweet girl who runs the merry-go-round with her dad or granddad or whatever he is, because they say both. The lady who works as a fortune teller.
The fortune teller who at first says, the bummer about being a fortune teller is that you can't read your own fortune, and then later on she gets mad at him for calling her a fortune teller. And
yes.
I'm like, you just called yourself a fortune teller.
Well, and she wanders, but that's when she's in character. So when we first meet her, she's hanging out in her civvies with a giant straw hat, and later we see her in her fortune teller getup. And it's almost like we're getting this tour with Dennis Hopper where he gets to wander backstage. And he's seeing all the secrets and meeting all the people, the sort of seedy old guy who runs the freak show the carousel, but also the guy, the old seaman who runs the mermaid attraction.
Who found Mora, right?
Yeah,
on the island.
Yes, supposedly. That's his story is that he found her on an island, which may or may not be true. But I mean, I just find it fascinating that in the course of this little story, which costs nothing, all right, we meet all of these people and really feel like we're going backstage. I mean, we feel like we're just sort of, without anything in particular to do, wandering and meeting all these sort of, carnies, essentially.
Right. That's a great observation. It does feel like you're kind of on. I mean, and Venice does often anyway. But you are sort of wandering through the LA of that time on the boardwalk, and you're basically being on the on the boardwalk of a carnival, and you're just kind of walking in and out of these things, of these different vignettes with these various people. It's an interesting observation. That's probably what it feels like.
And I mean, I wonder about Curtis Harrington. Because they are such, to me, they're quite full characters. They're weird, but they're full. It's like he's given some real thought to these people, and I wonder what went into it.
It feels almost like an Ernest Hemingway novel. Wow,
that's interesting. I mean, I can see that where you just be filling out, all these characters. So soon enough, I do want to mention for a moment before we get to the next piece of the plot, which is the scary part. Soon enough, the place where Mora lives is still there. This is the Hippodrome, the Louvre Hippodrome on the Santa Monica Pier, where there is a big old merry-go-round. I don't know if the merry-go-round is still there, but I've had a burger on Santa Monica Pier at this building. It looks exactly the way that it looks in this film. and it's gorgeous. I mean, this is an amazing building that interestingly enough we just saw in Blood Beach a couple of weeks ago. We were discussing that. So here's the cool thing. Blood Beach has the same building, but it was in ruins at the time. Adam, you weren't on the Blood Beach episode, but
no.
At that point, the Hippodrome had been destroyed in a storm, basically. And they didn't have any money. Nobody had any money to fix it up. So it was just behind chain link fences, and it was a disaster. I mean, it really was on the verge of being razed. And I don't think it had yet been declared a historical landmark. And then some money came in and some people invested in the boardwalk, and so now it looks the way it is. But if you look at it in this movie in Night Tide, it looks the way it looks now. If you look at it in Blood Beach, it looks like Escape from L.A. Basically, it's a complete,
wow.
Yeah, it's a total disaster. So it's very interesting to see that building go through these different iterations. And also Maura, I have to say, Maura's little apartment that looks out on the beach with like her balcony that sort of sits out there and just hangs over the water. I mean, I have no idea if it's real. I don't know if we're looking at a real balcony or if we're looking at a rear projection or
Yeah, I don't know. But whatever it is, that's like $3,700 easy right now just to get a place like that. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it's a real thing. I looked at it and I was trying to figure out how, where, and how, and from what I know of that place, and I was like, okay, how does she make some percentage of quarters that people pay to see her? Like that's a really, I mean, even if you're living above the thing, that's still that's a really good apartment,
Well, I mean, but isn't the guy who owns the place like her? Oh no, he's not.
It's the other people.
They don't even trust her. And there's other seedy people living in this building.
There's all kind of folks. It's unbelievable. It is like a Hemingway. Thing.
I think the thing of it is that this is in 1961. Well, you tell me, is it possible? By the way, that building was built in 1916, so at this point, it's already been there since the beginning of the century. But is it possible that Santa Monica was not that in demand in 1961, and so you could have an apartment that's literally on the pier and hanging over
and remember,
the water?
She's had a couple of boyfriends that have managed to die off before this one. So maybe one of those guys got her that place.
Left her. Oh yeah. Hey, you just nailed it. I think you nailed it. I think she was dating, I don't know, Rock Hudson or something. And
right, a Zucker brother. Yeah, he was dating somebody, and he got this swell apartment on the pier.
Tommy Smothers gave her an apartment. Great idea.
To be fair, I mean, it's worse than living above a rave establishment. I mean, you are. And she loves the music, which is strange. Have we said yet? I mean, have we said yet what the Hippodrome is? Have we said that it's a,
Yeah, well, I just mentioned it's a merry-go-round, but go ahead, expand on what it would be like to live over a merry-go-round.
Well, it would be like the most insane, clown-esque, cataclysmically carnival-esque home life you could possibly imagine.
But remember, she's working at her job while the carousel's going.
I guess that's
true. So
true.
she's not really there while that's happening. She's kind of sleeping when it's off, I think.
I guess that she worked every day. I mean, I guess so, but it just seems used. But she also says she likes the music. Anybody who says, I like the music, it's not like they live near the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, all they hear is dun 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 dun. I mean, at some point you'd be like, oh God, it's.
Yeah.
Can you imagine working at the It's a Small World ride all the time?
Yeah.
I love going back to that place because I go every time. We went last time you guys were here, but every time I go to Disneyland, which is often enough, I always make it a point to go by It's a Small World because it is the longest ride at Disney, and also it is amazingly entertaining to watch the people on that ride, but in particular the ones that are working that ride. And I figure it's like a gulag Like those are people who end up on the schedule who have done something horrible to the Disney Channel.
They're being punished. It's your
They're
karma.
like, oh my God. It's unbelievable.
The funny thing about exiting It's a Small World, I don't want to go too far afield, but I have to say, entering It's a Small World is really cool, and when you're floating out, that's fine. But in the last, room of It's a Small World, where they just have some, posters pasted up on the wall, it's the weirdest sensation because you're coming out of this extremely intricately produced experience. And then all of a sudden you're going through, the broom closet, where there's nothing here.
They gave up.
We're done. Are you still here? Go!
Murray, we need 27 more feet.
Oh my God! But I love that. But living over a merry-go-round, it would just be this calliope music and just a few bars of the same calliope music over and over.
Constantly.
Actually, it's less like The Small World and more like back when they had the FAO Schwartz had the Welcome to our world,
yep.
Welcome to our world, welcome to our world of toys over and over and over and over and over again.
It'd be like that.
Yeah.
Only worse.
The reason why this is a picture and not a film is it has all the trappings of basically a very, very ultra low budget film that someone has shot, not even, with the sound and the celluloid literally in the same camera, right? It seems like it's like a double system, a dual system. I mean, any number of different ways they could have done this with short ends. I mean, not a very high budget at all. However, given the stuff we've been talking about, Hopper's mannerisms, Mara and the fact that she catches a seagull and she was on an island, and you got Murdoch who found her on an island allegedly, and you've got the crazy lies that Hopper tells, and she lives above and she plays a mermaid at an attraction, and then she lives above a merry-go-round. The reason why this is a picture, it has so much, not complexity, but it has so many different layers to it.
Yeah.
It is an incredibly overproduced, low-budget movie in the sense that it's got all this stuff in it that otherwise people would be perfectly fine leaving out.
Yeah.
But there are all these different things that it has the complexity of a picture, but in the body of a low-budget film, like almost a very light film. It's very interesting because of it, because it's just, you find yourself, and that's part of the thing, is you're trying to make sense of it. I think your unconscious mind and your conscious mind sit there, they struggle until one of them chokes the other one until you pass out as you watch this movie, and you kind of get this dreamy kind of quality. It's fascinating.
It is very interesting. I like that, the idea of the conscious versus unconscious choking one another, and in fact, yeah, I mean that lends itself to what happens at the end. The lie that I said that Hopper tells, that's interesting with your theory that maybe. By the way, we should say right now there are killings going on, or at least there are killings that have been going on. The sweet girl who works out in the merry-go-round says, it's none of my business, but the girl that you're hanging out with it's possible that she murdered.
Right.
Is a suspect in a couple of murders. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, first, I should say you meet Murdoch, and Murdoch. I mean, there's this whole thing about being in the, in the Queen's Navy and all the quiet, and it has this sort of affected sort of characterization, which again, incredibly fascinating. But he could have just been a guy who was like, Mario, you're late, put on your tail,
Yeah.
But actually just has this, oh yes, Mario, why are you late? Oh yes, I'll get the amplifier on. Oh. And strikes up this conversation.
He uses quite as a sentence, which is something that I've only heard in the movies. Yeah.
Right? It's just it's just this and you look at it, it's almost like all these guys are better than this picture, but they're not, and they're in it, and you're just this collection of whole people, very strange people, and then when you get to the family that runs the merry-go-round, the daughter is going to tell.
So
Dennis
that girl
Hopper
is Luana Anders. I just want to point out that that the girl who is flirting with him and likes him, the good girl, basically, who's still a carny. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah.
The good girl is still
you
a
can
carny.
be a good girl and a carny. Come on.
Of course you can. I'm just saying that this is not like, I think typical Hollywood mores would show you the girl who kind of is part of seedy beach life, and then another girl who kind of has a normal middle class away from the beach inland existence. That's not going on here. You have the mysterious girl and the non-mysterious girl, but they're both carnies. And that girl is Luana Anders, just Anders, and she was also in the Pit and the Pendulum with Vincent Price and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, right.
Well, and she's so pitiful, like how she's just always like, oh, and sometimes you get lonely, and the person right in front of you is blah 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 whatever, and he's like, what do you think about Maura?
Right.
She's like, and then at the end, when Maura is conveniently out of the picture, she's like, so now can I be your girlfriend? He's like, yeah, okay, that's cool.
I think that's a perfectly perfect rendition of what actually happened in the movie.
It took a line of killings for you to be attractive to me.
Yeah.
Well, what I loved was the fact that, she was going to tell him about the two boyfriends, as we're sort of going down the plot now, two boyfriends who were involved with Maura before, and they turned up dead. They're perfectly nice guys that turned up dead. But what I loved about that is, as she was going to tell him, and then, like, I guess, was it her mother that's there? It was like, you're meddling.
It's just her family friend, her nosy family friend, who's
the fortune teller.
Who's also
fortune teller. That's right, not her mother. Yeah. And she goes, "You're meddling," and then basically, the other guy goes. She goes, "Well, should I tell him?" He's like, "Sure, go ahead." I love this dynamic. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's neat. Well, again, that gives you that, you're wandering around, and for some reason, because you're lucky, Dennis Hopper, the character, we, the viewer, we get to go inside and hang out with these people and imagine that we're part of this scene. I mean, you could create a whole series about these people working the boardwalk and the pier and the.
I feel like I know them now. I mean, like they're part of my memory.
We don't have to have what happens to Maura happen. You could have her still be around. You could do a whole 12 episodes of this thing. And it would be really interesting. It's like Deadwood, only on the
pier. And you've done a lot of research, Jason. I know on, certainly on beach life, so of a certain time. You struck on something which I thought was very interesting, which is sort of the perceived seediness of beach life. You have the duality of the seediness of beach life, but then also the sort of hip and cool sort of Frankie and Annette sort of aspect of being on the beach as well, and sort of Gidget and Moondoggie and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that is always there. That dichotomy is always there on the beach, and actually on almost anything that has a sort of a resort vacation sort of feel to it. Take ski resorts, beaches, whatever. You've got, because it costs real money to leave your job and go do this stuff. There's always a really high class part of it, but there's also a seedy part, because the other kind of people who get to enjoy that sort of thing are those who are willing to spend everything to have nothing, to actually do nothing but be around this situation. So it's...
Well, and that's always the case when you're in any place that's beautiful, especially if the weather's nice, is that you're going to have people who are like, well, if I'm going to be homeless or I'm going to be poor, I'm going to be a druggie, I may as well do it in a pretty place.
Yes. No, absolutely. And so, there's a real... And that goes on in... when we look at Gidget, which actually comes out 2 years before this movie is made, with Gidget, they are literally dirt poor. The kids hanging out on, they're all coming from middle-class backgrounds, but they've moved to the beach. One of them's living in a shack, and that's Kahuna. Kahuna lives in a shack to turn his back on commercialism, and he's living off what he can catch. And they vow not to work. They vow that all they will do is get up, surf, go to bed. That's it. You know, there's no money.
I think the more realistic version of that is Point Break, where they're like robbing banks to make it work.
No, it's a good point. But yeah, so this is also showing another way you could do it. You know, and Adam, you read the book that I wrote about living in this universe, which is find a job on the beach. Find a job on the beach, live cheap. That's it. You know, it's just that's your goal. So yeah,
and I've been on the beach. It's hard to find a job on the beach and live cheap.
Yeah.
I live on the beach now, and I'm like, where? What do you do here? I don't. How has time changed that much?
Right.
But
it can't. It's only gotten worse, Adam. It's gotten way more expensive. I mean, you know, yeah. How do you do it? You do it by driving to Santa Monica from. You know,
yeah. No, I know. I work in a completely different area. It's true.
Yeah. It's. I mean, yeah. Good Lord.
And what's amazing is all those movies and the whole idea about living on the beach, and you've got this picture, and what's amazing about that is, I mean, you have this, Gidget was great, but there were no mermaids in any of those things, and yet you have this whole mermaid thing running through this picture. And what's interesting is the layers we just talked about; these are all present, but then you also have the mystery of Mora. And you've got this whole business about this woman who keeps showing up, and if she's like the leader of the mermaids or something. I mean, it's like this,
or just some queen, or maybe an ambassador. She's in theory. I mean, because eventually Mora tells. She goes, "Oh well, that woman. I'm actually part of the sea people, and that woman wants me to go back."
Despite the fact that bizarre little monologue where she talks about how she feels connected to the moon or whatever, and he's like, "You're crazy."
I'm in the Navy, and you're crazy.
Yeah, and that's not enough for him to leave this girl.
No, not only does he not leave her, but he goes ahead and goes out on the boat with her to like a remote location where nobody knows where they are. That they're out
look, here are the warning signs. Right? You've got, and I know I said that he kept touching his head, and he was sort of weird, and I still think that. But you've got a girl who lives in a place that would easily be, $3,500-$4,500 in today's market if you could get that apartment, on the beach. So it's way above her ability to get that. And she works for 25 cents a shot, dressed like a mermaid in a sideshow. And then she again lives above a merry-go-round and likes the music. Collects things from the sea, like this sailor. Her two boyfriends previously were killed. And then this woman occasionally comes and stares at her and makes her faint and talks to her in a different language. And she feels a connection to the moon. And she believes she's also a mermaid herself. At some point in there, you might say she has issues. You might say, I think I'll go for the wholesome one inside the merry-go-round, because...
Yeah, but if you've ever been aware, you don't even have to have watched it. If you've ever been aware of how The Bachelor goes, it's never the wholesome one that wins. It's always the one that you're like, what? Why are you going with that one? She's psycho.
With the batshit crazy one?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately that's true. I have seen that play out.
It's more interesting. People are attracted to drama and mystery and danger. I mean, that's why people like to go fast in cars and ski and surf and all those things.
But in this case, she invites him out to a remote location, and there's always the possibility that, I don't know, she could kill.
Yes.
Right. I think he's a little bit of an adrenaline junkie.
There's every reason right, absolutely. And we've heard so far that those boyfriends are dead. So yes, when he goes out there's got to be a part of his mind, if he's remotely conscious, that this could be dangerous if she turns out to in fact be a killer.
That he may think, I'd rather be dead than
I just think the fact that I think he makes that choice open-eyed, thinking, I'm going to see what happens, and maybe he'll use his seamanship skills to survive.
Why not?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe he has a death wish.
And maybe he has a death wish. But I remember in Boyhood, Adam, did you see Boyhood? The new
Boyhood, the Linklater one?
Yeah, the Linklater Boyhood.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember there's a point early on when the kid is like a teenager, and he's wandered over into this under construction house where all of his friends are vandalizing the house, and he has no reason to be there particularly, but no reason not to be. There's a certain amount of that, a sort of listless kind of go-alongness that could get him into real trouble going on here too, and I think that's very important for boys. I mean,
yeah, I can see that.
He just, and some people wind up getting in way over their head, and I think that could happen. But anyway, what happens?
That's why nobody rents a car to anybody under guys under 25.
Your prefrontal lobe is not even fully formed. So yeah. Anyway, maybe she's not gonna kill him. So they go out in the boat together and they go diving, and she immediately cuts his arrows and swims away. So
right, which
she tries to kill him. She appears to try to kill him, but the explanation is that she just wanted to be able to be separated from him, and so she prevented him from chasing after. I want to go back to the lie that I said that Hopper told, and I forgot to mention it. And it was earlier when he first meets the family that runs the carousel. They go, "Oh, Maura, you're here to see Maura. Well, that's kind of creepy." And he's like, "What?" And they go, "Well, do you know her very well?" And he goes, "No." They go, "Did you just meet her?" And he goes, "No, I've known her for a long time."
Yeah.
Well, that's weird. I don't know why he says that. Maybe
that's a great lie.
To shut down.
I think he just doesn't. I think he's kind of like, these guys are acting like she's not, doesn't belong with me, and I want them to think that she does. I mean, I just think it's sort of.
That is a read. But if you also wanted to play the theory that he is a killer, that the killings are actually going on, that Maura is being blamed on it, then you can imagine a scenario where he's known her a long time because he's been spying on her and has never met her. He's been killing people for a long time, and she's been blamed for these murders.
What? Where on earth are you getting that from?
No, it's just this thing. I mean, as you look at him, I mean, he does some really weird stuff, and he's just sort of like
he's been on the sea. He hasn't been around to kill. That's completely ridiculous. I don't know.
Well, that's what he's saying. He could have rented that outfit.
I think it's a read. I think it's a he may not even. No. He's in the Navy because they send the shore patrol to pick him up. So
yeah, that is true. Later.
I think it's an absurd read.
I think it's
anyway. We find out who the killer is because we find out. So that's not like.
Oh well, yes. Okay.
Right.
So anyway, at the end, and don't worry, Julia. I've just now. Expanded on Adam's theory, so I'll figure out a way to make that make sense too. Don't worry. But in the meantime,
I appreciate
following the theory that's in the movie, we get to so Maura disappears. She's not around, and then he goes back to. And by the way, how weird is this? His girlfriend disappeared in open water, just plumb disappeared.
He hangs out for a while, waiting to see if she shows back up.
Good for him. But anyway, eventually he comes back. He's like, "Gee, I guess I got no girlfriend anymore." She hasn't shown up. He doesn't call the Coast Guard or anything. He instead goes back to the sideshow, which is weird.
No, that actually makes perfect sense to me because he's like, well, maybe somehow she ended up getting back without me. Like maybe she swam back to shore. So he's like, is she at her post? Because I mean, the guy's there.
I guess she made it back. Maybe she's on shift.
Because the dude's there. Because his, come see the mermaid.
Yeah.
So he's like, huh. So he's there. So clearly there's somebody's there.
He's spaced out even more than before. I mean, now it's like a David Lynch film. He's like, he's like barely.
Which is perfect
talking.
for Dennis Hopper.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, there's like a weird. Remember how
like a lost highway kind of thing going on.
Yeah. And so he goes in, and the kids are in fact paying to see the mermaid, but it is her. Her head is sticking out of the water. She's quite dead.
Which is so freaky that there's kids looking at her.
Right.
That just totally wigged me out. I was like, why are these little kids allowed to see this?
Because they don't know.
Dead mermaid.
Because the mermaid
she
was
looks
always
dead. It's super creepy.
As opposed to before, where she looks fleeting, right? I mean, it's all the same.
No, her eyes are wide open. She's staring blankly.
Yeah.
It's very strange. Whereas before, she was like brushing her hair and stuff.
Well, that's a wonderful bit of horror, though. The idea that you'd be in a sideshow, and so therefore you wouldn't know that the illusion you're looking at is real, is one that's been exploited many times. You know?
Right. That just adds to the, it just adds to the weirdness and the carny sort of aspect of it.
Weird is right. Weird is the right word. I mean, weird in like the classic like Weird Tales kind of sense. The movie wraps up very quickly after that, because no sooner does he see that than the captain comes in brandishing a weapon. There's a fight. The captain gets knocked out by the tank as it falls on him, and then we get like a scene from like Psycho. Basically, we wind up in the police station, and the mystery is resolved. Which is, Julia, would you like to explain the mystery? Well,
I mean, it's not going to be that big a shock. It's that the captain's been killing off these young suitors because he wants this girl to himself, and he tried to warn him. He tried to say, but then she wanted to save Dennis Hopper, so she kills herself rather than allow the captain to kill him.
That backfired.
And that's the end. That's the
So I have a question now, and that is, okay, it starts out as one kind of picture, and and I don't know. You guys did some research probably on this thing and the story and how it came about in production and everything else. But was this something that was a certain kind of story that was then sensationalized to then kind of make it seem, kind of more than it was? Like, oh, it's a Killers from the Sea, or this macabre twisted tale.
There's still a little piece of that because we don't know who the hell that old woman is.
Yeah, they leave.
Right, that stays largely unresolved with a big question mark.
Yeah, because it maybe this is almost like, there's always those films where you have the Scooby-Doo thing, where you reveal that the ghost was never a ghost all along. And this is almost that, except for
remembering the SNL thing about Scooby-Doo is pretty funny.
Yeah, but instead what happens here, that's the case. This guy's been doing the murders, but there was that woman from the sea, and she might have been real, or she might have just been another criminal. But if she was real, then it might mean that Maura really was a mermaid.
And wouldn't you go with a thing where, like, Maura, you'd be like, the next thing would be, hey, Sam, Maura's body disappeared from the morgue. Really? No kidding. What happened?
Oh, that would be great.
And there was a trail of giant fish slime from the Santa Monica Pier coroner's office to the open ocean. Oh my God, is she out there somewhere? Maybe, kid, maybe. It's the kind of thing where she would have to have done this selfless thing and drowned herself or whatever. But in that, she became a sea person. She became the thing that she always was, which was a mermaid. I mean, you would think there'd be some kind of that's where the mystery would be. It wouldn't be like, who was that old woman? I don't know. It would be, her body would disappear, or it's in this trunk, and then it would be gone, and then like a big question mark would come up with a big chili thing on it. It would be that kind of thing. That would be the big mystery, where people would be in the theater going, maybe she was a mermaid. It just seems like they accented the wrong part of it.
No, it is the least. It's the least satisfying part of the film, is this whole sort of very quick wrap-up. And we don't know. So Curtis Harrington says that he wrote a short story that he then turned into a screenplay. This is an interview I was reading. And he knew Dennis Hopper, had met him somewhere, and Dennis Hopper was interested in the screenplay. Corman comes in. I don't remember how many producers are involved, but we don't know how many drafts it went through, or if it even dawned on him to hammer the greater possibility of the supernatural a bit more, or if he really wanted to wrap it up with this very sort of naturalistic tone with just a hint of the supernatural. I mean, I don't know, but I like your reading of it a lot better. I actually still like the notion that Dennis Hopper was the killer all along a lot better, except for the problem is that the captain admitted to the crimes, unless he's lying to cover Maura because he thinks that Maura was the killer.
But she's already dead. Why would he lie about that? I mean, he would put himself in prison
or
just to save her post-mortem mortal reputation.
Yeah, what it would be is you go to the ship, and it would be like the weird confession in Attack of the fungus people or whatever. It's this thing of actually Hopper disappeared off ship, and he has no memory of kind of what he's been doing, wandering around. He's been fabricating this whole thing. I was seeing a mermaid and all these things, and he actually has been going on this weird killing spree.
That's a great idea.
Like
it would have to be this whole thing. Like a psychiatrist comes in from the Navy, and he's like this whole, he's explaining the whole story, and it was him going on this killing spree this entire time, that he fabricated this whole thing about Mora and the captain and the kind of the whatever, and the real story is something else. It would have to be like that. I could see that. That would be kind of amazing.
Yeah. No, there are several options.
And it feels like a dream because it really is a dream.
Yeah. There's so much of this, as we called it, this dreaminess to it. That any of these will work. I mean, it's just by that end, and who knows? It's Corman, so he may have just they may have just run out of money and said, let's do a final scene where you're in a waiting room and have a couple sailors walk you out, and that's gonna be it. I don't know, but that's the film. We should get our final thoughts, and then I'm really dying to know what you guys have been watching or endorsing this week. But my God, this movie, Night Tide. Let's go in the same order that we did before. If you can think of anything that we forgot to touch on, I welcome you to bring it up. Julia, Night Tide, final thoughts.
I mean, I like the mood of it. I like the black and white and just kind of the graininess. It just feels interesting. Like, I think it would be not nearly as interesting if it were in color.
I agree with you about that.
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. I think, I agree with Adam that it would have been neat to have some kind of twists there at the end, or I always like twists, or just something a little bit more supernatural. But it was interesting, and I'm glad we watched it.
Very cool. Adam, where do you wind up with this movie?
This is like a weird distant cousin that you kind of hang out with for a weekend, and it feels like many weeks sort of together. I feel like I had times with these people, that I had breakfast and I went to their place, and it was kind of cool, and there was a guy there saying, quiet. I really felt like I sort of had gone through that, but I don't have a very strong memory of it. I could probably talk about them as if they're part of like some family that I knew somewhere, but it's hard for me to sort of line up all the different details of the picture and give it a full resolution. I feel like losing the end anyway. So I'm just going to have to remember this thing as some part of my childhood that, where I spent time at the boardwalk. And that's completely fine with a young Dennis Hopper. Because I think it holds up pretty well. Just the dreaminess factor, I think, is really interesting. That's one of the things I think that probably makes it enduring. And I guess maybe even why, not that it's a classic by any real stretch of the imagination, it just has so many unusual qualities to it. You can't just call it a low budget. You can't just, it's got so much stuff in it. And even though it doesn't have a particularly great ending, we're talking about it. And I feel like this isn't one that I would necessarily keep on rotation at all, ever. But it's one of the things that I was really glad that I saw, and it's going to be right up there with The Terror, where I'll just be like, I've seen it. I can't totally tell you what it's about. I know what the premise is, but all kind of stuff happens in the middle of it. I'm not sure, but I'm glad I saw it. I'm perfectly happy to call it a dream as opposed to a picture that I saw, and that would occupy a perfectly reasonable place in my subconscious.
I like everything you guys said. To me, this is a movie I really enjoy. I think I totally will watch it again, because I'd already watched it a couple times before we did it for this show. I would love to see it in a duo with The Terror. I think that's a perfect choice.
I don't know how you would survive that. I think you would be.
It would be very.
Your heart would stop.
It'd be only about 3 hours, but it'd be the strangest, most sort of oniric 3 hours that you ever experienced.
Wow.
Yeah. By the way, Curtis Harrington also directed the guy who directed this movie also directed Queen of Blood. That also stars Dennis Hopper, still quite young because that was 1966. It's only 6 years after this one was made, and Basil Rathbone's in that one, and that is a freaky ass movie, and it's in vivid Technicolor. I mean, like,
have you done that movie yet?
No, it would be neat.
Oh,
yeah, that'd be a cool one. Oh boy, that one gave me the creeps when I saw it as a kid. Good Christ, but yes.
Really, I don't think I've seen it.
It's about this ship, and they had a lot of footage laying around from these movies that they had bought from the Soviet Union, but for like the ships and stuff like that. But inside, it's about a ship that goes out, lands on a planet, picks up a body, if I recall. It turns out to be an alien. The alien breaks free and is laying eggs everywhere. I mean, it's Alien. It's just it's 1966, and
wow,
and it's really good. Yeah. Hang on, let me look. I believe who was it? I actually don't know the name of the girl who plays the Queen of Blood, but she's really scary. Oh, Florence.
No, I would see this now.
Yeah, no, maybe we can watch it when I'm in LA. All right, so let's do endorsements. I want to hear what you guys are watching, listening to, insisting the rest of us watch. Adam, anything going on?
Well, I took the occasion when I was back in LA to go see Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Oh, well, the girls have seen it. I haven't seen it yet. But they've been talking about it nonstop since they saw it.
Right, and I was, I'm kind of course, I like Tim Burton, and so I'm always interested in, a sort of I don't want to say like a return of Tim Burton, because that's not really accurate, but sort of something where we go, okay, well, I want to see something new that's from Tim Burton that I like. It's gonna, and I like Eva Green a whole lot because I've been following her for a while. And so I was intrigued by the trailer, and I didn't know much about the books, although I know
I was aware that Tim Burton was the director. I don't think that it even penetrated my consciousness that it was a Tim Burton film.
Tim Burton, and I saw it. I saw it on Saturday night, and I got to tell you, we really liked it. It seemed like there were definitely moments in it that were Burton-esque, and there were ones that were, it was great. We thought it was really terrific. It was worth seeing, and then they're probably going to do a sequel. Had a really good opening. We got Eva Green was great. I don't know. I found it really entertaining, and we found it sort of charming in an unusual way. I think there's more to it than maybe what came across in the movie, but I thought it was really interesting. Again, I hadn't read the book, but I kind of liked it.
Wow, very cool. No, the girls haven't stopped talking about it since they saw it. So yeah, good tip.
Mine was the Designated Survivor show.
Oh, you saw it too? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because Kiefer, I loved the idea of Jack Bauer as undercover as the president of the United States.
Right, as the 11th most powerful person that finally becomes president. Yeah. What do you think?
I love it. I love that show. I thought it was really good. Oh yeah, it's only been the one episode so far, right? I think if there has been a second one, I haven't seen it yet, but because they skipped for this last week. But no, I thought it was really interesting.
Very cool. I have not been watching it. Julia and I have certain shows we watch together, and certain ones that are just totally hers. But one that we do watch together is I have two endorsements. I'll try and make them fast. But one is Documentary Now. This week's Documentary Now is one of I had tears in my eyes. It was so great. Documentary Now, if you don't know, is an IFC show that is all documentary parodies. It purports to be a greatest hits season of a long-running PBS program dedicated to documentaries. But it's actually
So
fake.
not.
Oh my God! It's parodies of known documentaries that you'll recognize. And so, like this season, they took the documentary The War Room, which was the movie about Bill Clinton's run for president, and the characters like James Carville and George Stephanopoulos, and they did a fake. They did a parody of The War Room. And when they do these things, they copy them down to the lighting and down to the way the different characters are played. And then towards the middle of the episode, and all the episodes are only half an hour, they include some kind of twist that makes it go kind of off the rails from the way the original documentary went. Always wonderful. This week's is a pitch-perfect copy of Spalding Gray's Swimming to Cambodia.
Yeah, it didn't really go that much off the rails.
No, the only thing that was
weird.
different here is that in Swimming to Cambodia, Spalding Gray, and that movie was directed by Jonathan Demme. Spalding Gray was on stage and he just talk, and he would occasionally show a slide or pull down a map or whatever. Here, Bill Hader is playing a similar character, but they'll occasionally cut away to competing monologues by the actual people that he ran into.
Telling that whatever he's saying is complete BS.
Right. And it's wonderful and it's brilliant. And Joya had never even seen the Spalding Gray movie, and she still thought it was funny. I had seen the Spalding Gray movie, and I thought it was brilliant. So that's.
And then there's, of course, a twist ending.
Yeah. That's my recommendation. I got one other recommendation, and that's that if you're into riff tracks, I've been listening to a lot of Mary Jo and Bridget, or Bridget and Mary Jo, who are the female team of riff tracks. And Adam, you've done the riff tracks shows,
Oh, sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, they have the female team, and they do almost solely. They focus on industrial films that are always really hilarious. They're about how to behave yourself at prom and why people won't ask you out on a date. Just all this stuff.
And Mary Jo is Pearl, and Bridget is actually Mike Nelson's wife.
Yeah, Mary Jo played Pearl in the actual show. And Bridget would play different characters periodically. They are so funny, and I'm kind of endorsing this because I'm a huge fan, but also I'm going to interview those guys on Thursday. So.
Are you? Wow.
Yeah. So if you're listening
Very
to this,
cool.
listen to that interview, or it doesn't exist yet, go check out some of the Bridget and Mary Jo short riffs on Riff Tracks, and then listen to the interview. It'll be awesome. So that'll be cool. All right. Wow, what a fun movie to discuss. Night Tide, I just really enjoyed going over this. This has been, I don't know, it's one of the most enjoyable movies I've had the chance to talk about. It's not one of those ones that leaves you with almost nothing to say. I very much enjoyed this. So I really appreciate you guys being here. For those of you listening, join us on Facebook. Let us know what you think. Let us know questions. Tell us if you disagree. We are totally interested in hearing all about it. And thanks, guys. We will talk to you soon.
Night.
Thanks, you guys. Good night.
Bye.